Juliana was inside with her 3 children when she heard the sound of a car pull up and park roughly in front of the house. Moments later, the front door flew open. Uncle Malik barged into the living room and roared, "Get out of my house. The 5 days I gave you is over. Pack your things with your children and leave." Juliana stepped back, trembling. Her voice was thin, but her heart was bold. "This is not your house," she said. "My late husband built this house with his sweat. Aren't you ashamed of your wickedness? Look at the children your brother left behind. Are you not the one who should protect them? Now you are the one stealing their inheritance." But Malik, her late husband's elder brother, was deaf to truth. He signaled. His 2 sons stormed it without a word and began to throw Juliana's things outside. Clothes, school bags, pots, shoes, a broken wall clock, even the baby's mattress. Juliana knelt on the floor. Tears ran down her face. "Don't do this to us," she begged. "Where will I go with my children?" But Malik had no soul left to speak to. He turned his face away. And Juliana, mother, widow, and now a stranger in her own home, watched helplessly as everything that once held memories was tossed outside like garbage. But what could Juliana do? She couldn't fight him. The entire family, her in-laws, had ganged up against her. Not one stood on her side. They had already shared everything her late husband left behind. The supermarket, the cars, the farmlands, and the many plots of land. Piece by piece, they stripped her of every trace of his legacy. This house, this last house, was the only thing left for her and her children. And now, even that was gone. She had taken them to court, hoping for justice. But the court failed her. Her in-laws had used money to silence truth. The judges were already bought before a file was even opened. She watched her hopes die in silence. Helpless and ashamed, Juliana gathered the scattered belongings in one corner with her children. Her legs were weak. Her heart was heavier than the load before her. She couldn't cry anymore. People came out and stood by the roadside, watching. Some whispered prayers. Some cursed Malik under their breath. But no one moved. No one helped. "It's family matter," they said. "Better not to interfere." So many eyes, yet not one hand. So many mouths, but not one voice of courage. Then the unexpected happened. The bus driver who had brought Malik stood watching quietly. He had seen everything. The shouting, the humiliation, the tears. Something in him broke. He walked up to Juliana and said gently, "Get your things. Leave this place." Without charging her, he helped her and the children load the rest of their property into the bus. Then, without another word, he drove them straight to her friend's house. Winifred opened her door and saw Juliana, dusty, drained, and defeated, standing there with her children. Her eyes widened, but she didn't ask many questions. She simply pulled her in and hugged her tight. In the days that followed, Winifred helped Juliana move into a small rented 2-bedroom flat. It wasn't much, but it was peace. A place to breathe again. A roof over their heads. With her husband gone, and the properties he left behind stolen like meat from a widow's pot, Juliana soon faced a harsh wind of life. She got a job at a water packaging factory. The work was hard. The pay was little, but she kept going. She struggled to feed her children. But no matter how tough it got, she managed to put Philip and his younger sisters in school. The school fees bled her dry, yet she paid them, sometimes in tears, sometimes in coins, but always on time. She endured. She carried her pain in silence, wrapped in the hope that one day her children would grow and wipe away the tears that wickedness had written on her face. Her deepest hope rested on Philip, her firstborn and only son. She dreamed of the day he would stand tall and redeem the honor of his late father's name. But as Philip entered his teenage years, that dream began to fade like smoke in a harmattan wind. In the absence of father, another man stepped in, a street gang leader. He whispered empty promises into Philip's ears, feeding his anger, shaping his thoughts. And soon the boy drifted. He started running with street boys, selling drugs, stealing from the house and even from neighbors. Philip became wild, hardened. No longer the son Juliana, once rocked to sleep. Then one morning, things shattered. Philip stood before his mother and cursed her. "You're old school," he spat. You must be stupid to think I'll end up like you. You're weak. That's why our uncles and aunties took everything from us. You couldn't fight for us. You let them walk all over you. That's why we're poor and miserable. It's your fault. I'll never be like you." Juliana's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Not because she had no answer, but because she knew the truth. She had chosen silence not from weakness, but from love. If she had dragged the matter with her in-laws to the end, they could have harmed her children, possibly even killed them to secure what they had stolen. She gave up the fight, not because she feared her enemies, but because she loved her children more than land, money, houses, or revenge. The insult stung Juliana deeply, but she said nothing. Quietly, she left for work, her heart heavier than her feet. Back home, Philip was still seething. Rage clouded his judgment. "I'll disappear," he muttered. "I'll go to the city and be a man. The street will make me strong. Staying here with women will make me soft." He stormed into his room and began stuffing clothes into a faded school bag. Anger gave him speed. Then he crept into his mother's room, looking for money. He lifted her bag and shook it hard. Her folded wrappers fell like wounded birds to the ground. A few cash rolled out and scattered. That moment froze time. His mother's last dignity, tossed like trash, lying still on the floor. Meanwhile, at work, Juliana stood beneath the old orange tree. She couldn't focus. Her spirit wandered. Philip was her last hope in this world. After all the pain, after losing everything, he was the one reason she endured. She didn't just see him as a son. He was meant to become her protector, the father his sisters no longer had, her light in the dark. Now, that light was flickering. The street was pulling him fast, and she was losing, and it hurt more than the betrayal of her in-laws. This, losing her son to the streets, was the deepest cut of all. She stared into space, broken. Just then, her boss appeared, a short, bitter man with no soul in his voice. "Are you here to work or dream?" "Move," he barked. Juliana bowed slightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and scurried back into the building, wiping her eyes before the first tear could fall. After the day's work, Juliana returned home, tired, dusty, and praying for peace. But peace was not waiting. Her clothes were scattered across the floor like rags. Her small wooden safe had been pried open. Every money she had saved was gone. She gasped, "Philip? Philip, where are you?" she cried, her voice rising with panic. "Do you want to finish me? That was all I had. There's no food in this house." She rushed into his room, but it was empty. His bag was gone. His clothes, too. Only silence remained. Juliana sank to the floor, her breath shaky, her heart breaking. But it wasn't the money that made her weep. It was the absence, the loss. "Philip," she whispered through tears. "Where are you? Please come back home. I've lost your father. I can't lose you too." She sat there for a long time, the house quiet, the shadows long. The money faded from her mind. Hunger didn't matter. Rent could wait. Only one thought consumed her. Where was her son? Was he safe? Would she ever see him again? Slowly, she wiped her face and pulled herself together. "I am his mother," she said aloud. "He insulted me. He stole from me. But I will not curse him." She knelt on the cold floor. "God," she prayed, "protect my son wherever he is. Keep him from evil. Pull him out of the street. Show him the right path. He is still my last hope, the one who will rise one day and wipe away the tears of injustice done to me and his sisters. Lord, don't let the street swallow him." When she stood up, reality returned like a hammer. There was no food in the house. The month had just begun. Her rent was unpaid. And now, her only money was gone. Juliana stood in the center of the room, numb, her hands by her side, her eyes staring at nothing. She didn't know where to start. All she had left was faith, and even that felt thin. The next day, Philip arrived in Lagos City. His mission was clear: find a gang, join them, and become a man. He remembered the sweet lies the gang leader back home had fed him. "You'll become untouchable. The police will fear you. Girls will chase you. People will respect you just by hearing your name." On the street, the man had said, "Power is everything. That's the real strength of a man." He never told Philip about the blood. He never mentioned the jail cells, the betrayals, or the unmarked graves. Only the glitter, not the grave. But Lagos was not a dream. Philip hadn't been in the city long when he wandered into a rough ghetto. The moment he stepped in, a group of boys surrounded him like wolves. They beat him, stole his bag, took his shoes, and left him bleeding in the dust. Philip limped out of the area, barefoot and broken, but his pride still held on. He would not go back home. He was still determined to join a gang and become a strong man. Hungry and worn out, he wandered the street until he collapsed onto a wooden bench beside a quiet-looking homeless man. The man watched him quietly, then stood up and returned with a bottle of Coke and a loaf of bread. Philip grabbed them and ate like someone who had been lost in the desert. The food softened something in him. And when the man asked, "Why are you here, boy?" Philip answered honestly, "I left home. I came to Lagos to be a man. The street is where strong men are made." Then he went on and told him about his mother. The homeless man chuckled softly. Then his eyes grew serious. "So, you think your mother is weak?" "No, boy. She's the strongest woman alive." Philip looked up confused. "Your father died," the man continued, "and your mother didn't fold. She stood up, worked, suffered, and still managed to send you to school. You call that weakness?" Philip said nothing. "And maybe," the man added, "she let your uncles take those properties not because she gave up, but because she was protecting you and your sisters." Philip frowned. "Protecting us? How?" The man leaned closer. "I've seen it with my own eyes," he said, voice low. "Uncles who poisoned nephews. Aunties who sent children to the grave, just to grab what was left behind. Sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it's through spiritual means." Philip's eyes shifted as he listened intently to the old man. "And this street you think makes men?" the man scoffed. "No, son. The street eats boys like you for breakfast. Drugs are for cowards. Guns are for bullies. Real men don't destroy. They build. They protect. Your father is gone. Now, you're supposed to lift your mother in every small way you can. Go to school. Learn a skill. Carry responsibility. That's what true strength looks like." The words pierced Philip's pride. For the first time, the noise in his head went quiet. Never before had anyone spoken to Philip like that. The words of the homeless man struck deep, exposing his pride, crushing his excuses. His heart grew heavy with regret. He thought of his mother, the insult he hurled at her, the money he stole, the pain he caused. Shame followed him as he left. As he wandered the streets, uncertain of where to go, his eyes caught a small handwritten sign on a black gate. "Gardener wanted." Desperate for direction, Philip knocked. An elderly man opened the gate. His voice was calm, his eyes sharp but kind. Philip bowed slightly and said, "I'm here for the job." The man introduced himself as Don Caleb. He studied Philip for a moment, then smiled. "Something tells me you're not just looking for a job. You're looking for a fresh start." Philip nodded. Without asking for much, Don Caleb gave him the job on the spot. Unlike the rich men Philip had imagined, Don Caleb was not proud or harsh. Though a wealthy business tycoon, his heart was soft. His wife had passed years ago, and his children, now successful, lived abroad. He lived alone in a big house, surrounded by silence and memories. Don Caleb gave Philip a decent room at the boys' quarters and treated him with dignity. For the first time since leaving home, Philip felt safe and seen. Back at home, Juliana sat with her friend Winifred and poured out her heart. She spoke of Philip's disappearance, the stolen money, the fear that the street might swallow him forever. Winifred listened patiently, then placed her hand over Juliana's and said, "Don't stop praying. God can reach the heart no one else can touch. Even a child lost in darkness can be led back by light." But deep inside, Juliana hadn't just come to talk. She came because she was desperate, because the house was empty, the kitchen was bare, and her daughters were hungry. Yet the words refused to leave her mouth. No matter how hard life got, Juliana was not one to beg. Asking for money always felt heavier than carrying the whole world on her back. After a long pause and a tight swallow, she finally whispered, please borrow me 10,000 naira. I'll pay you back at the end of the month. I just need to buy some food or my daughter's, and I will go hungry." Winifred nodded quietly and stood up. She went into her room, returned with the money, and placed it gently in Juliana's hand. Juliana sighed in deep relief. "Thank you. I promise to pay back as soon as I can." But Winifred smiled and shook her head. "Don't. Take it as a gift. Use it for your daughters. And may God stand by you." She stepped into the corner of the room, returned with a small bag of rice, and pressed it into Juliana's arms. Juliana almost broke into tears. The way of that simple kindness touched her more than words could say. She thanked her friend again and again, clutched the bag of rice to her chest, and walked home, her feet heavy, but her heart a little lighter. Years passed, and Philip remained with Don Caleb, working diligently and quietly building a new life. One morning, while washing the car, Philip noticed a black bag tucked under the seat. Curious, he opened it, and his heart raced. Inside was a bundle of neatly wrapped cash. He didn't hesitate. He took the money straight to Don Caleb. The old man was not only grateful, he was moved. For him, this was more than honesty. It was proof of character. From that day, Don Caleb began to trust Philip deeply. He started sending him to the bank with large deposits, and Philip returned every time without a flaw or missing note. Impressed by his loyalty, Don Caleb promoted him. No more gardening. He made Philip his personal assistant, brought him into his office, and began teaching him the ropes of business. Philip now had his own desk, his own responsibilities, and a seat at the table. In the evenings, after work, Don Caleb and Philip would sit outside under the shade of the mango tree, talking like father and son. They talked about life, business, responsibility, and the kind of man Philip was becoming. Philip no longer chased street respect. He was earning something far deeper, honor. Meanwhile, as good things blossomed for Philip in the city, life for Juliana took a darker turn. The water factory where she worked folded up. Just like that, she was jobless again. Then came the blow she feared the most. One morning, the landlord stormed in and threw her and her daughters out of the apartment. No job, no home, nowhere to turn. Once again, she went to Winifred. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but Winifred listened patiently and, as always, offered both comfort and wisdom. "There's no work here right now," Winifred said, "but you can go to my village. By the river, women smoke fish and earn small money. It's not much, but it's honest. The good news is accommodation is free. I'll talk to my people. They'll give you and the girls a decent place to stay." Juliana wiped her eyes and nodded. She packed what little she had left and journeyed with Grace and Victoria to the village. There, by the smoky banks of the river, they began a hard, humble life, smoking fish to survive. It wasn't easy, but at least they had a roof over their heads. And for Juliana, that was enough to keep going. Philip now had his own office, a car, and Don Caleb was paying him well. Yet, despite all his success, something haunted him. His mother. He wanted to go back home, to kneel before her and ask for forgiveness. But shame gripped him. He didn't know how to begin, so he confided in Don Caleb. The elderly man listened quietly, then said, "You need to return home, son. Go and make peace with your past. I'm sure your mother will forgive you. Who knows? She might need you now more than ever." Those words struck deep. The next morning, Philip packed his things, got into his car, and began the long journey back. When he arrived at the compound where they once lived, he knocked on the door. A stranger answered. "I'm looking for Madame Juliana." "She used to live here," Philip said. The man shook his head. "I moved in not long ago. I don't know who that is." Philip's heart sank. He stepped aside, staring at the house as memories flooded back. He asked around, but no one knew her whereabouts. Eventually, an older man gave him a lead. "Try Winifred House. She was close to Madame Juliana. If anyone knows, it's her." Philip thanked him and drove there. Winifred opened the door and paused. Then her face lit up. "Philip, is this you?" "Yes," he nodded. "Please, I'm looking for my mother. Do you know where she is?" Winifred smiled sadly and said, "Yes." Philip let out a deep breath. "Thank God," he whispered. She ushered him in, sat him down, and gently began to tell him everything. How Juliana lost her job, was chasing her home, and now lived by the river, smoking fish in the village to survive with her daughters. Philip got the address and drove straight to the village. At the village square, he asked for directions and was pointed toward the riverbank. There, Juliana was busy with Grace and Victoria, tending to trays of smoking fish. Her face was worn, her hands darkened from work, but her spirit still glowed with quiet strength. Philip approached slowly, heart pounding. He knelt in the sand before her. "Please forgive me," he said, his voice cracked with sorrow. Juliana turned, stunned. Then she dropped the basket in her hand, reached for him, and lifted him up into her arms. She held him tightly for a long, long time. Then she whispered through trembling lips, "There is nothing to forgive. You are my son. I will always love you, no matter what." At that moment, Grace and Victoria came running. When they saw him, they screamed in delight and flung themselves at him. Laughter filled the air. Juliana handed over the fish smoking to Grace and hurried to cook a fresh pot of spicy river fish. When it was ready, she served Philip with joy written all over her face. Every time his fish was nearly finished, she added more to his plate. "Mama," Victoria teased, laughing, "you want to burst his belly? He can't eat anymore." They all laughed, and Juliana's heart soared. That evening, under the cool glow of the moon, they sat outside and talked. The night was deep, but they didn't care. Juliana spoke of her struggles, the pain, the loneliness. Philip listened, and more than once, tears rolled down his cheeks. He told her about the homeless man, how those words struck him and turned him around. Then how Don Caleb gave him a chance that changed his life. Grace blinked wide-eyed. "So you now work for a rich businessman?" Philip smiled gently. "I handle his company's finances. He treats me like a son." They sat under the stars, talking and healing, until past 2 a.m. Later, inside the humble room, Juliana and the girls slept peacefully. But Philip lay awake, slapping mosquitoes and staring at the ceiling. The heat, the bites, the cracked walls. He finally understood what his mother and sisters were enduring. And right there, he made a silent vow. "I will not let them suffer again. Whatever it takes, I will lift them out of this place." In the morning, Philip called Don Caleb and explained everything. His mother's suffering, the river work, the village life. Don Caleb's voice was calm and full of warmth. "My house is too big for just you and me. Bring them over to Lagos. Let them begin a new chapter." Philip was overwhelmed with gratitude. He turned to his family and announced, "Pack your things. We're moving to the city today. All of us." Grace and Victoria screamed with joy. They quickly gathered their few belongings while Juliana quietly shed tears of gratitude. After breakfast, they loaded into Philip's car. On their way, they stopped by Winifred's house. Juliana hugged her tightly, whispering thanks. Philip stepped forward and handed her a thick envelope. Winifred opened it and gasped. "Philip," she stuttered, "this is too much." "You helped us when we had nothing," Philip said. "Now let me thank you properly." She cried and waved them off with prayers. Then the journey to Lagos began. When they arrived, Don Caleb received them with open arms and a warm smile. The mansion that once felt empty now hummed with life. In the days that followed, Juliana and her daughters adjusted to city life. Grace and Victoria were enrolled in one of the best schools in Lagos. Philip also hired a private tutor to help strengthen their grasp of science. One evening, Don Caleb called Philip to his study. "I want to sponsor your sisters," he said. "Since they live under my roof, let me handle their education. I've got more money than I need." Philip paused and replied, "Sir, thank you. You've done more for me than I can say. But please let me handle their needs. I must rise to my duty as the man of the family. I am now like their father, and I have to prove it with action, not just words." Don Caleb smiled and nodded slowly. "I'm proud of you, son. That's the mindset of a real man." Juliana knelt in her room one morning and whispered, "Lord, you have turned my mourning into dancing." Just days ago, I was nothing. Now I sleep in peace and my daughters laugh again." She wiped a tear and smiled. Her heart was full of gratitude. But what she didn't know was that something deeper was unfolding quietly in the heart of the man who took them in. Don Caleb had watched her closely. Her humility, her grace, her quiet strength. She reminded him of everything he once loved and everything he longed for again. Since the death of his wife, he had shut that part of his heart. But Juliana was different. Each time she passed him with her gentle smile or offered a quiet greeting, his heart skipped. But he said nothing, not because he didn't feel it, but because he feared she would misunderstand. What if she thinks I want to take advantage of her living under my roof? What if she feels obligated? No, I won't hurt her dignity, he often told himself. His love was not based on pity. It was respect, deep and real. But for now, he kept it hidden. A war between love and fear was raging quietly in his heart. And yet, day by day, that love grew stronger. One day in the office, Philip noticed that Don Caleb was not looking all right. So he asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Don Caleb answered, "Yes, but there is something bothering me. I will tell you, but I don't want you to misunderstand me. It's about your mother." Philip quickly became tense and wondered what wrong she had committed. "What is it, sir?" he asked. Don Caleb replied, "I think I love her, but I don't know how to tell her, so that she won't think I'm trying to take advantage of her living in my house." Philip burst into an awkward laughter. Don Caleb said, "You silly boy, why are you laughing at me? I'm serious here." Philip, still laughing, dialed his mother's phone and put on loudspeaker. She answered, "Hello." Philip replied, "Mama, Don Caleb told me he loves you, but is afraid to tell you because you might think he wants to take advantage of you living in his house. But I can assure you, he's not the kind of man that takes advantage of people. I've lived with him for many years, and he has never taken advantage of me." Then Philip ended the call, but continued to laugh at his boss. Don Caleb looked at him and shook his head. "You have no breaks, do you?" Now that the egg had been spilled, Don Caleb left the office and returned home. He met Juliana, sitting quietly in the backyard, peeling vegetables. He walked up to her and said gently, "What your son told you is true. Since the day I met you, I've loved you. But it's okay if you don't feel the same as me. It won't change anything. You and your daughters can continue living here as long as you want. I will never harass you or make you uncomfortable. But if you agree, I don't want to waste time. I would like to marry you as soon as possible." Juliana looked at him, smiled softly, and said, "I want to marry you too, Don Caleb. If you showed kindness to my son and now my whole family, when my own in-laws threw me away like garbage, then I want to marry you." Don Caleb was speechless for a moment. Then, with a bright grin, he said, "You've just made me the happiest man on earth." The next few days that followed were beautiful. Don Caleb and Juliana were like teenagers in love, moving in pairs, whispering to each other, laughing over little things. He skipped the office more than once, but Philip was there to handle everything. Back at home, Grace and Victoria began to notice what was going on. One evening, as Juliana was applying cream in her room, they entered and sat on the bed. They giggled like little girls. "Mama," Grace said, "we don't understand. What exactly is happening in this house between you and Don Caleb?" Juliana turned slowly and raised her eyebrow playfully. "Just mind your business and leave me alone," she said jokingly. Just then, Philip walked in and overheard the conversation. "They are the latest lovebirds on the planet," he announced dramatically. The girls burst into laughter. "I said it," Victoria shouted. Grace added, "Our mother is in love, and the whole world must hear it. Where's my phone? I'm posting on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere." They all laughed heartily. Joy and happiness filled the house. For the first time in a long while, Juliana felt like a woman again, loved, respected, and surrounded by people who cherished her. A day was fixed for the wedding, and it was grand. The celebration was colorful, rich with culture, music, and laughter. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers came to witness the union of two people whose journey to love had been anything but ordinary. Don Caleb's sons flew in from America. When they met Juliana, They were deeply touched by her grace and humility. They were happy to see that their father had finally found someone who truly made him smile again. Juliana wore a beautifully crafted traditional dress, her face glowing with joy. As she stood beside Don Caleb, hand in hand, there was no doubt this was a new beginning. From that day forward, Juliana went on to live a fulfilled life, surrounded by love, honor, and a sound family. Her children thrived. Grace and Victoria grew into smart, confident young ladies, and Philip became a pillar in the business world. The woman who was once chased out of her home now lived like a queen, not because of wealth, but because of the love that found her, lifted her, and gave her story a beautiful ending. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.